It's no secret that Manchester United have had plans to build a new Old Trafford or renovate their current stadium after they were not involved in England's bid to host the Euros. And well, what would that look like? A lot of AI drafts have been going about. What's going to happen? What is the plan? Is it going to be a new stadium? Is it going to be a completely new rebuild? Is it just going to be them doing up the South Stand that needs to be done? Is it going to be a renovation of Old Trafford? Well, reports have come out today to suggest there could be a whole new Old Trafford. There is 3 plans, and the most likely plan is to build a stadium next to the current stadium in the. To give context, this is what is shown. It looks like the plan they've come to is to build a sort of Old Trafford next to the current Old Trafford, which has been described as the Wembley of the North. And I don't really like that. Old Trafford was once the most iconic, best stadium in the world. And yes, it was built in 1910. Yes, it's been neglected by the Glazers for years. And yes, it's needs updating. It's outdated and it needs doing up. It needs refreshing. It's an iconic stadium. But once upon a time, this was the best stadium in the world. And I don't want it to be the Wembley of the North. I want it to be Old Trafford, the place to go in the North. But what has been coming out today? What has been written? It's been said that Jim Ratcliffe wants Old Trafford to become the Wembley of the North in a bold £2 billion project funded by the government to rebuild Man United's decaying home, which would probably mean demolishing Old Trafford. Now, you've got 2 situations here. You basically expand and extend Old Trafford, renovate Old Trafford, or you build a brand new stadium next to Old Trafford because United own that land and that's where the car park is. It would be cheaper to renovate Old Trafford, but it's been seen as in the long term more expensive because if you add 20,000 new seats into Old Trafford, that's 30% more money coming into the club. If it becomes the Wembley of the North, it's a venue that can be used in the United Kingdom that the government may potentially fund, and they think that they could potentially get fundings if you modernise it. Because United, I've been to Spurs' stadium. I've been there many times. If you compare United Stadium to Spurs, for a club like Manchester United, it needs to be upgraded. I love Old Trafford. It's iconic. It's beautiful, but it needs to be upgraded. And realistically, I don't want to tear down Old Trafford because I love the history of the club. But it will likely be easier to rebuild a new stadium and potentially be more cost effective. It's said that Ratcliffe wants Old Trafford to become a state-of-the-art wow venue, a bit like Tottenham Hotspur, and it said that the Ineos billionaire is in a hurry since agreeing a deal for a 25% stake of United because he knows he's 71, he wants to see United succeed soon, and he wants to see a new stadium. And this new stadium would have a 90,000 capacity. It would be seen to basically rival Wembley. There were some suggestions. It could have a bit of a part roof like Wembley that could potentially go all the way over, but I think that was just more rumours online. And United, Manchester's becoming a bit of a media city, BBC going up there. Manchester, they want to sort of regenerate the North. Man United reportedly might see an opportunity for government funding to help with this because Jim Ratcliffe's, given billions for a 25% stake and then to invest another $2 billion in a new stadium on top of the financial situations we're having, the FFP situations we're having. You do think, where does this money come? I mean, Ratcliffe has 237 million he has saved to himself to invest in infrastructure. Ratcliffe has brought Old Trafford and 237 million in pledged investment on top of that to go into infrastructure, which would not cover the costs. But it is said that Ratcliffe is really keen. He wants to leave with Old Trafford being a stadium that is legacy worthy. It used to be a legacy worthy stadium. I mean, it is an iconic stadium, Old Trafford. It's a beautiful stadium. But the problem with Old Trafford is I've gone there and there's leaks. It's been ignored by those owners. It was said by James Ducker in his article that a source close to Sir Jim Ratcliffe thinks fans would be quite happy to accept a brand new stadium if they stay where they are. Now, the question to you guys is, do you want just keep Old Trafford, do it up? You can't get rid of Old Trafford. It's too iconic. It's too much history. Or are you saying, well, look, if they build a brand new stadium next to Old Trafford, they don't change the location, I haven't got a problem because the facilities at Old Trafford was 1910. The wires, the plumbing, everything was at 1910. It could cost more and be in the long run to potentially, rejuvenate Old Trafford. You might have to rebuild things and it's all outdated. Would it just be best to build a brand new stadium to compete with Spurs, to compete with the Etihad, to compete with what Real Madrid had done? It was said, it's estimated that expanding the current Old Trafford would cost at least 800 million, but potentially moving to a new ground would be 1.5 billion to 2 billion, and that Ratcliffe wants to create a new Wembley of the North with ambitious plans for a spectacular new Old Trafford. Ratcliffe believes the North of England should have a world-class venue to rival London's 90,000 capacity Wembley and could seek government funds amid Westminster's levelling up pledges. And sources close to Jim Ratcliffe feels that United need a state-of-the-art wow stadium and feel there's a strong argument for having a top-class major venue in the North, which is needed. So £800 million redevelopment or 1.5 to 2 billion new stadium. United were excluded from hosting the Euros because they weren't sure if there was going to be a new stadium or the stadium was going to be under construction. This is something that's been needed to be done for years. I'm trying to say something and the words aren't coming out of my mouth. I'm really stuttering today. They should have done upgrades to Old Trafford at least 10 years ago, and it's been delayed. And one of the reasons the Glazers are selling the club or were looking to sell the club or bring in a stake is because they knew that Old Trafford needed to be done up. They didn't have the money to do that, and it was like they're either going to have to sell the club or someone's going to have to give them the money to make the changes needed to be made at the club. Right now, United has a £74,000 capacity, but they would extend to over 90,000, which is pretty much 20% more, which is 20% more from match day revenue. And in the long run, it could be more cost effective to build a new stadium. So it would be interesting to see. I mean, I want to see your thoughts on this down below. For me, I do think the North needs a new major venue. I do look at Spurs Stadium and say I think Man United need to just sometimes move on and build this brilliant, positive, new stadium that is modern and it's techie and it's everything you need. But then the idea of demolishing Old Trafford doesn't sit right with me. Getting rid of Old Trafford. Can you keep Old Trafford for the women's, for the academy? And can you have two stadiums? I don't know. I mean, it's a possibility. But I get the feeling is it's a 1910 building. It's got 1910 electricity supply, all of that. It's going to take a lot of work to regenerate it and then continue to regenerate it. Moving across the car park, same location. It is basically there. It could be a new stadium like Tottenham Hotspur where you go, wow, you look at Tottenham, the modernisation of the stadium, how it's used for American football. I've been in that stadium multiple times. And I go on Old Trafford and it's a shame to say this, but we are a level behind. We used to have the best, most iconic stadium and it is outdated. We are miles behind. And I saw someone say this comment, and they said that they were basically someone that used to attend Old Trafford a lot. And they were there from the 50s. They came to Old Trafford from the 50s. And they said, they saw the stadium in the 50s and how amazing it was at the time. But they said sometimes you can't improve the existing infrastructure. And Man United at a point where, well, the existing infrastructure, can we improve it? Can we redevelop it? And he said to someone that's been going to Old Trafford since the 50s, he feels like he couldn't. He said you might have to you can redevelop the old stadium, but you could maybe do it with a size reduction so the women and youth team could be there, because we shouldn't be taking down the old stadium. There's too many memories, too many achievements there. It's too iconic. It's not like the Spurs stadium where not much happened. Well, things happened in the past at Spurs, but you know what I mean? Not the level. He said maybe you can do a size reduction and it can keep Old Trafford into somewhere where people will go for the women and men's team. But he's saying Man United will need a new stadium. It's too outdated. They need a new modern of the art stadium to compete with the top. And it's interesting because I see why we need a new stadium. I see why it might be easier. I see why if we keep the same location, yes, it's a different walk, but it'll basically be the same area. And I like the idea of a new stadium and having a top state-of-the-art stadium and competing with Spurs, but I don't want to see Old Trafford demolished. I feel like ultimately the best case scenario is we could build this state-of-the-art stadium that is just Old Trafford and Old Trafford remains. I don't know if that's realistic. I think the best option would be to redevelop Old Trafford. But as said, there are three options. Option A, you just upgrade the current structure, you modernise it. Option B, you renovate the current structure. So you can, option A is upgrading the structure in general, almost building a new stadium over the current stadium and it's got a whole new structure. Option B is just the current structure itself is just renovated, just done up so it doesn't collapse and it's not a falling building and it's not as messy as it has been. Option C, you build a new stadium from scratch next to Old Trafford. Let me know in the chat what you want to see. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Bye.